Okay, so filters. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of filters. And as a new photographer, if you are a new photographer or filmmaker or drone pilot, filters might not be the first thing that you think about when it comes to buying new accessories and things. But some of these can be super creative and some of them are definitely necessary. So we're going to run through them quickly. We're going to go through the UV and skylight filters, polarizer filters, grey gradual filters, and then we're going to talk about some specialist filters, which I think you'll like. And then we've got things called step up and step down rings. So we're going to go through those, but we're going to start with UV and skylight filters. Okay, so what do these do? They basically cut out the rays, the UV rays from the sun, and they're supposed to kind of make a bit of difference to your photos by cutting out those ultraviolet rays. But to be honest, I've never used them in like 40 plus years. I've never used these filters. I do occasionally use them for specific other reasons other than cutting out the rays of the light. But I think lenses with their coatings on and everything these days are so good that you don't necessarily need them. So what most people you'll see online saying is that they protect the glass on front of the lens, which is fair enough. They actually do that. I think I've mentioned in a previous video to do with lenses that when I was filming on a beach in Tarifa in southern Spain, we were doing a model shoot. There was lots of spray coming off the sea and my lens without a filter on kept getting caked in all this kind of gunky muck with salt water and things like that. I never used a filter, but I did clean the lens carefully because salt can scratch the lens. And 20 years later, I'm still using that same lens. It's still absolutely mint with no problems whatsoever. So unless you're insured like I was with my business, it's probably worth getting one of these and just putting it on the front of the lens. Just because it will protect your lens from that sort of thing. If it's raining or if there's lots of dust in the air, or if there's particularly sea gunk and things like that, then it's pretty much a see-through filter. It does have a little bit of a warm tint to it. It's a little bit dirty, that one, because I've never used it. But it does have a little bit of a tint to it, so it may give a bit of a colour cast to the shot. But it will kill those rays and potentially make a difference. But to be honest, these were around long before kind of Photoshop and Lightroom, so you're able to kind of correct anything like that. But having never used one, I've never had someone say, I don't like my photos because you didn't use a skylight filter or a UV filter. So these are kind of, they sometimes give people peace of mind. I've never cracked a lens by banging it into something because I use lens hoods. And I've never had any issues by not using a skylight or UV filter, but I did just want to cover it quickly because if it was a choice between buying a UV filter, and before I go on any further actually, I will just explain that buy a good filter. If you've got the money, spend better money on a better filter than just buying some cheap rubbish, because if you spent £1,000 or more on a lens and you put a really cheap bit of glass on there that's going to cause this problems around the edges of the photo, or just basically degrade the photo in the slightest way, then it's just not worth having it. It completely defeats the whole object. So it's worth spending a little bit more money on quality filters. I won't go into all the details of who's the best and who's the worst, but there are companies that I use that I will cover a little bit later. But don't skimp on the filters because it's glass. It's exactly the same as the glass that's in here. You want quality glass. So it's really up to you whether you buy these or not, but I just wanted to show what's available. But like I was saying, if it was a choice between spending 50 quid on a skylight filter or a decent polarizer, or even money towards a polarizer or something else, then I would give this a miss and buy something a little bit better that you're more likely to use, and more specifically that you're more likely to actually see some benefits from. Okay, so that's UV and skylight filters. Like I said, it's just a quick video. I've never used them. There's no real benefit to your photography. You're not going to see a massive difference, and certainly not things you can't do in Lightroom or Photoshop anyway. So I'll leave it there with those, but just think about whether you want to buy one or not, or if you want to spend that money on something a little bit better. So next we're going to talk about one of my favorite filters, and that's the polarizer filter.